Hello to all of our viewers and all of our listeners across various social media channels and on YouTube. It is my great honor to welcome Hilary Beirne. Hilary has many different strings to his bow, many different titles, but I suppose one of the most important is chairman of the New York City St. Patrick's Day Foundation, and as well as that, the chief administrative officer of the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York. One of the largest, if not the largest parades, and one of the oldest, if not the oldest. Hilary will enlighten us more shortly. And before that, he was executive secretary of the parade as well. And he has many other roles in Irish American society, and we're going to explore some of them and the importance of them. So Hilary, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Hilary, I suppose you're an Irish national, you're not an Irish American. And maybe tell us a bit, I know you have roots in Roscommon. Maybe tell us a little bit about growing up in Roscommon, your time in Ireland, and your journey to America, please.
Well, I come from just outside Boyle, County Roscommon, and my father was was the local veterinary surgeon, and we had a farm. Grew up on a farm. We had 10 acres of apple orchard. So growing up as kids, when apples needed picking, my mother looked to the lads who were in the secondary school with me to come out and pick apples. So I have a lot of good memories of picking apples with my friends from Boyle. I went to a two-teacher national school, Holly Mountain National School near Ardcarn, Boyle, where my parents are currently buried. And again, a lot of good memories there. I ended up going to University College Galway for a year and then transferred to Dublin to complete a degree in agricultural science. I worked then for a period of time in O'Hare's Animal Feeds in Dundalk for about 2.5 years. And then I was appointed area rep for Volac in Connacht, and Donegal was my area. And I introduced at the time in 1988 the wrapping of the bale silage into the west of Ireland. Up to then, farmers were working on using plastic bags, which wasn't very, very successful. And now you see it everywhere in Ireland. But in the course of working for Volac, I happened to make a mistake, for the want of a better word, and went on holidays to New York for Christmas. And during that holidays, I was offered a job teaching in New York, and I returned to Ireland for about 2 months. And I came back to New York, and I had a job teaching in a secondary school here in New York the next day. And as the saying goes, history has played itself out since. At one point, I did look at returning to Ireland because my parents had passed, and we had the farm there in the west. But life has led me on a different path. And
how did the parents react, Hilary, when you came back from holiday, from a Christmas visit with a job or a potential job?
Well, I'll put it this way. My memory is such that my mother was crying at the airport when I was leaving. She was very, very upset. And because at the time I was the only one that was living at home in Boyle, because that was my area. Everyone else had left. I'm from a family of 10. And she was heartbroken, for the want of a better word. She subsequently had heart issues and died within 12 months. And in that first 12 months, I returned to Ireland 3 times to visit my mother before she passed. But she was heartbroken, there's no doubt about it.
Look, Hilary, I'm sure both of your parents would be extremely proud looking down at how you have prospered since then. And look, you continue to work as a science educator in the New York area, Hilary. I suppose they often say, like the priesthood and like politics, that teaching is vocation. Do you enjoy teaching? What do you get out of it, etc.?
Well, I'm 33 years teaching, and I use the comment that the kids are very good to me, meaning I have wonderful students. I get to do amazing stuff with them. And when you have students who are extremely cooperative and look forward to your class, it's amazing what you can do with them. And while I'm eligible to retire and I'm looking maybe possibly to a third chapter in my life, I still enjoy interacting with the young people. They keep your mind fresh and they keep you young as well. And that's very, very important that you have a fresh sense of life um, as you start to hit retirement.
And Hilary, you have a lot of voluntary commitments. I didn't even name them all at the outset. Along with your parade commitments, you're involved in the ad hoc committee in DC to protect the Good Friday Agreement. You're an honorary member of the Fighting 69 Regiment. You have a lot of commitments throughout the year because of your parade role, etc. How do you balance all of that with family life and with your role as a full-time educator?
Needless to say, very difficult. My wife, we use the term, she's a parade widow January, February, and March. She gets a shadow of a husband back on March 18th. And all my other commitments, you squeeze them in. It's amazing what you can. A lot of times I'll put down my laptop at 10, 11 o'clock at night because of trying to get emails together, get thoughts together, write a paper or two on the various issues that we're currently dealing with. And it's time consuming. One of my remarks was last year I was in Ireland for 3 weeks and it was like nonstop go, 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 go. From going to Queen's University to meet a group that were coming in from the States with Senator Mark Daly and Peter Sheridan, CEO of Cooperation Ireland, to meeting people from the Irish government and having discussions with some of the senators and TTs concerning matters that concern the Irish citizens that live abroad. So I was very happy to be able to take a week's vacation with my friend from Boyle, Joe Mulhern, who lives in Spain.
Very good, Hilary. So Hilary, just for the benefit of listeners and viewers at home in Ireland, or indeed people who aren't familiar with the power and with the scale of Irish America, tell us a little bit about the parade in the first instance, its history, how it occurred in the first instance, the scale of it. I've been lucky to go on a few occasions, but you really have to be there to understand the scale of it and how the city, for those few hours, essentially revolves around the parade and Fifth Avenue shuts down. Would you maybe just talk to our listeners and our viewers about that, please?
Oh, the parade started in 1762 in then a colonial New York. The British Army were here. And basically, it was a group of Irish expat, most likely from the Connaught Rangers, serving here in New York. And they wanted to have a parade to celebrate being Irish. And they had it starting at Bowling Green that we talked about. And at that time, it needless to say, there was a vast majority, the rank and file of the army were Irish from Connaught and very few British officers. So they decided to let them have their parade. And as the saying goes, it's been history. The Irish here in New York have marched on the streets of New York every single year since 1762 on that first parade down at Bowling Green. And even during the pandemic, I struggled. In 2020, the city was shut down about 5 days before our parade, but we managed with members of the 69th Regiment to have a symbolic parade to keep that tradition alive. And this past parade was our 262nd parade. And the reflection of that is it was one of the first, it was the first ethnic group to have a celebration of their heritage and their culture here in the United States. It was also an expression of religious freedom, which is, again is an important part of the United States Constitution. And more importantly, it has unified the community here in New York in particular and North America around that parade for 260 years. And if you reflect, it's the only parade in the world that has survived a war of revolution, a civil war, World War One, World War Two, the Great Depression, and two pandemics, the 1918 and the 2020. So it's an amazing legacy, and to be part of that parade is just a huge honor for me. And despite the many years that I'm there, I just marvel every year. I get goosebumps when I watch just people come out to celebrate being Irish in New York City. It's just spectacular. It's a bucket item list for people, and unless you come and march in that parade, you really have no idea the significance and the impact it has on you personally, as well as the city. It's just an amazing event. There's no doubt about it.
I agree fully with you on that, Hilary. Hilary, again, for the benefit of listeners and viewers, there's a lot of ancillary events that happen that day and around that day, maybe beforehand as well. A lot of traditions in terms of Gracie Mansion and in St. Patrick's Cathedral, etc. Would you talk us through some of them? Because again, they're big events for a lot of Irish people who are visiting. A lot of business is done at these fringe events, a lot of networking, etc. Can you just, it's about a lot more than the parade. I know the parade is very important, but there's a lot of other events around the parade. Would you talk us through maybe some of those events and some of those traditions as well?
Well, in the lead up to the parade, most of the county associations have their dinner dances around the actual parade. So some of them are held before, some of them are held after the parade. So that's very significant for them to get together. A lot of county councillors come out to attend those events and to network with their constituents here in New York. We have a gala event in the lead up to the parade, the St. Patrick's Day Foundation. And like this year, we had the governor, the mayor of the city was there, various Congress people were there, union leaders were at it, church leaders such as Cardinal Dolan. We did a presentation to him. And we had about 700 people the day before the parade had come to that event. So it's quite a significant event here in New York. On the morning of the parade itself, you have Gracie Mansion, where the mayor hosts the community. The governor also hosts a breakfast in New York City for the community. And of course, we have the Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is a Mass for the deceased members of the 69th Regiment. And that starts off the day on the right footing for us, because the parade was very closely attached to the church. And when the Irish came here down through the years, they were educated in Catholic schools. The New York Irish were the ones who actually set up the educational system here in the United States through the Catholic Church, and that relationship has continued in here in New York, in that we have a Mass before we have the parade, and that will most likely continue well into the future. As someone says, St. Patrick, well, you have to have a Mass.
And as I was telling me, Hilary, just maybe tell me about the journey of how you got involved in the parade. I personally think it's something really special that an Irish national can rise to the role you have in terms of organising the parade. Would you just tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Well, when I came here, my father's first cousin, he was actually in charge of the parade. Go figure. So I was here 2 weeks, and he had me work the reviewing stand where I met the governor of New York State. And you have to picture a lad from Roscommon meeting 2 weeks after he left Roscommon, meeting the governor of New York State. But that's basically how I got involved. And with any voluntary organization, you're given a task. And my personality is such, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I just follow through. And before I knew it, with all the tasks that I was assigned, I was moved up through the ranks very quickly. And for the last 22 plus years, I have been basically the main person doing the logistics of the parade and putting it together every year. I've had the privilege and the honor of meeting some absolutely amazing people through what in essence is a 262-year-old United States institution, because that's what the parade is. Everybody in the world looks to New York for the St. Patrick's Day parade. We're shown all over the world, and I certainly have enjoyed, as I said, the privilege and the honor of interacting with so many people across the world. Just an amazing trip for me personally, but something that I'm extremely proud of.
And rightly so, Hilary. Hilary, you talked there about Bowling Green, and we made reference to it when we chatted before we started recording. And I know that the Bowling Green Association recently proclaimed you a New York hero. And I suppose, firstly, you might tell us who the Bowling Green Association are for those of us who are based here in Ireland. And I suppose, secondly, I want to highlight that when you accepted that award, you said it wasn't just for yourself, it was for all of the volunteers associated with the parade. So maybe you might touch on as well how many volunteers or how many other stakeholders are involved in making the parade happen.
Well, the Bowling Green Association is basically a business association. They're located in Lower Manhattan. And when the Irish actually came off the boats here in New York back in the day, they would have disembarked at Bowling Green. The first St. Patrick's Day parade started there at Bowling Green, and it's right beside the ceremony was at the Irish flag raising, and that's right beside the Wall Street Bull that most people would recognize. The association honored me because last year in 2022, we were basically here in New York, the first major event in the United States post-COVID. We had just come out of COVID, and as you said there, rightly so, I couldn't do what I do without a lot of volunteers behind me. And last year in particular, it was extremely difficult for all of us to get a parade up and running and to get groups to come and march in the parade, given that 3 weeks prior, you couldn't use public restrooms here in New York. And if you're planning to come from anywhere in the world to New York to participate in the parade, you don't plan 3 weeks ahead, you plan months ahead. So part of the award was really me receiving on behalf of our committees in recognition for the work that they did and myself last year and in the previous years, keeping that 260-year-old tradition alive here in New York of the Irish marching on the streets. On St. Patrick's Day, we have about 150 volunteers. Usually 2 days before the parade, most of my work is complete, and that's the night where I meet with the volunteers. We instruct them on what we expect, certain protocols that they follow, and also we give them the line of march of the parade. And we have some people who volunteered in the parade, multi-generation, like one family, 6 generations. That's like there's no organization in the world that would have that, like 6 generations of
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And in my case, like Frank Beirne, my father's first cousin, I follow in his footsteps. Just like I follow in the footsteps of all the people who've gone before me and the people who've marched in that parade, and has kept that parade going for 260 years. It's just an amazing legacy. And as I said, it's something that I'm so proud to be associated with. And people say, well, when are you going to give up that parade? I go, well, as long as I need it, I'll be here.
I want to move on to another part of your work, Hilary, which is the ad hoc committee on protecting the Good Friday Agreement in Washington, D.C. And I suppose if I can just preface this next section, as you're well aware, President Biden in the coming days is going to be visiting Ireland, a much anticipated visit. But as ever, cynical voices come to the fore and query the cost of this and query, the value of the Irish-American relationship, etc. And I think the value of the Irish-American relationship, the relationship between our two countries, but also between the people of our two countries, was shown dramatically in the context of the challenge that Brexit presented to the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes.
And even President Trump, who was heavily aligned with Boris Johnson politically, even his administration, in terms of its officials like Nick Mulvaney, still showed great commitment to the Good Friday Agreement. Can you talk about the work that you and your colleagues have done on that committee, please?
Well, first and foremost, just to let you know, I'm one of just two Irish-born nationals on that committee. A gentleman from Cork joined recently. So when I was asked to join what in essence is former members of the State Department, Congress people and senators to join that group, it took me 2 minutes to decide I was joining. I remember back when I lived in Ireland watching Tip O'Neill, who was then the leader of the Senate here in the United States, and he was on that committee, and I admired the work that he did back in those times with Ted Kennedy and JFK. And I have to say, like I say, it took me 2 minutes to decide I was joining that group. But they are a group that are extremely influential. Post-Brexit, and a lot of alarm bells went off here in the United States, especially in Irish America. And needless to say, that group was put together to basically help the United States formulate policy when it came to interacting with the British government and their intentions in relation to a hard border on the island of Ireland. And in no uncertain terms, the United States government basically said that that was a no-go because of this group and the influence that they have in the United States and in the White House, and as well as in the Senate and the Congress. And basically, Boris Johnson and the British government still are working, hoping that there will be a UK US trade agreement. And one of the sticking stones that we made sure that was brought up was this Brexit deal, and to make sure that there was no hard border on the island of Ireland. And that became part of US policy. And until there's certain guarantees put in place to ensure the negotiations in relation to the US and the United Kingdom when it comes to trade, that's still in the background of everybody who's working on that negotiation for a trade agreement. So needless to say, I still don't understand why I'm in that room, but I am. And it certainly, again, is an honor to sit in a room and listening to political leaders from the UK or from Northern Ireland, or community leaders in Northern Ireland that we've met with, and trying to get a sense of what's the right path to take, and to get a sense of what we need to put our support behind. I was at a meeting with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland in Washington, and let's just say it was very, very enlightening for me. I don't revolve in those circles, but and it's been very educational for me, and certainly I've learned a lot, and certainly have a greater appreciation for the delicacies that goes on in the backgrounds. And being part of that now here in the United States, but more importantly, I represent Ireland when I walk into that room as an Irish national, and I bring to that table that nobody has in that committee, and that is I grew up in a time of the Troubles in Ireland. I worked part-time in the north of Ireland. I had interactions with the British Army, going into Newry many times because I worked in Dundalk. And also, I've had the experience of having to run from a bomb in Belfast. So I bring a unique life experience into discussions in that room that nobody else would have here. And to me, that's important. And that the views that I bring, growing up in Ireland, as an Irish national here in the United States are important to bring to the play because that helps in the long run in formulating a better policy for the United States and for the benefit of the people on the island of Ireland.
Well, Hilary, thank you for your service in that regard and the service of all of your colleagues in that committee. And I suppose American help, both through President Biden and through the previous Trump administration and through Congress, has been so helpful and I think caught the British by surprise, but has been incredibly helpful. And look, hopefully things resolve in Northern Ireland and the Assembly gets up and running there again, and the people of Northern Ireland have a say in the running of their own country. I suppose I want to touch on the Fighting 69th Regiment, of which you're an honorary member. And again, I suppose for viewers and listeners on this island, they're probably most familiar with the Fighting 69th in terms of the very fine banner that President JFK presented to the House of the Oireachtas during his iconic address to the joint sitting of the House of the Oireachtas. And for people based in Sligo, they may be familiar with the monument unveiled by John Perry and Mayor Bloomberg and the community of Ballymote to the Fighting 69th Regiment. But I suppose, Hilary, tell us, why are you an honorary member of the Fighting 69th Regiment? How did that come about? And maybe tell us a little bit more about the history of the regiment, please.
I was, well, to be an honorary member, it has to be approved by the Secretary of the Army, which when I received the certificate indicated that, I go, oh, wow. But it is certainly a privilege and an honor for me to be part of the regiment and being an honorary member. They have led the parade here in New York as the official escort for 162 years. And they've been a home for Irish immigrants coming from Ireland post the famine. They were established right after the famine by General Michael Corcoran from Sligo, and Thomas Francis Moore was the designer of the Irish tricolour. And the regiment, as I said, has been a home for a lot of immigrants that came here to the United States. It allowed them to do service here in the United States, but also it was very, very important in the lead up to 1916 because Ginger O'Connor came to serve in the 69th and then went home and subsequently trained the volunteers for 1916. So that the history of the connectiveness of the regiment, not only with the parade, but with Ireland, it stretches back 162 years. And that significance was played out in particular in 1963 with JFK presenting their second colours to the people of Ireland. And as I said, the significance of that is the regiment themselves thought it was so important that that relationship be maintained as it is still today. By presenting their second colours that was actually on the battlefield of Fredericksburg during the American Civil War to the people of Ireland. So they gave it to their then Commander-in-Chief, JFK, to present to the people of Ireland. So it's an amazing legacy. They're the most decorated regiment in the entire United States Armed Services. There are multiple Congressional Medal of Honors. There's two brothers actually from Neenah, and one received the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest award that you can receive here in the United States. And the other one, you'll love this one, received the Victoria Cross, which is the highest award for service in the British Army. And both medals actually are on display in the armory itself here in New York. But amazing history. They fought at Gettysburg. They became known as the Fighting Irish. That was General Lee that gave them that at Gettysburg. The chaplain of the regiment at the time and the Irish Brigade went on and founded Notre Dame University, which is now known as the Fighting Irish. So amazing. And while the regiment today, most of the leaders still have Irish names, that the rank and file are reflective of the ethnicity of New York City. And I have to say, watching them here this past March at the Mass, The soldiers, the rank and file, act as servers with the priests, and it really truly was a reflectiveness of the ethnicity of the city, and it was great. And the commander, Lieutenant Colonel Lilly, who's got Galway connections, said to me, Hilary, I don't think they fully understood the importance of the regiment until they were standing at the Mass. And he said it had such an impact on them that many of them, post the parade, said to them, we now understand why the regiment is so important and the history is so important to be maintained. Even though they're not of Irish extract, they realize the traditions of the regiment need to be maintained, and they will continue to maintain it in the future.
Brilliant, Hilary. And, you know, I think the sacrifice that so many Irish people made in that civil war, and indeed the ultimate sacrifice that President Lincoln made shortly after it, was so important in terms of ensuring the preservation of democracy, the preservation of all of the kind of the values we hold dear today, that they were preserved, and the United States was able to project them into the world in the 20th century and save the world on two occasions during the World Wars. Hilary, amongst your other many commitments, sorry, I talked across
I was going to say, it's amazing going to Irish America and the history. There was a General O'Beirne, spelled the same way as myself, was the Provost Marshal for Abraham Lincoln. And also going to Irish American history, when Irish nationals came here, they never forgot Ireland, just like myself. And they continue to lobby and to organize here in the United States that in 1914, for example, Owen MacNeill received what would have been the equivalent of $3.75 million today, 2 checks to form the Irish Volunteers. And the fundraising that went on to ensure that there was a state formed was just absolutely amazing. And the political influence that the Irish had at that time here in the United States, that they brought to bear on the Irish government, or the US government, who subsequently brought to bear on the British government to negotiate peace in Ireland, but also to stop the executions at 1916. Now, one has to remember that same influence is still there today. And 2 days from now, or 3 days from now, the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement is a reflection of that ongoing commitment of Irish nationals and their children to Ireland. And it's important that we don't forget the history, but also we continue to nourish and nurture that relationship. It would be a shame for Ireland to lose that connectiveness to Irish America, given there is a lack of immigration to this country. A lot of Irish nationals are going to Canada, Australia in particular, and it's important that relationship is nurtured, because the influence, the political influence, the economic influence in terms of employment in Ireland is enormous, and that needs to be continually nurtured.
And indeed, of course, the influence that Irish business now has in America too. I think something like 100,000 American jobs depend on Irish companies across all 50 states, and there's something like 260 billion of Irish investment in America. So it's very much now a two-way relationship as well, and that's brilliant to see, and that didn't happen by accident either. So Hilary, I agree with your points there about the importance of fostering this relationship. I think it's a relationship that can't be taken for granted, and I've done some research on the White House Shamrock ceremony, and you can see how the work of our ambassadors throughout the 50s and the 60s and the 70s made that a successful event, and the day-long event it now is. So Hilary, on that theme of continuing to have an influence and have a voice, I want to touch on your involvement. As I said before, you have many different involvements on committees, etc. I probably don't have the full list of them. But another significant one I want to touch on is votingrights.ie. And you're an executive board member of votingrights.ie. Could you tell us a little bit, please, about what votingrights.ie is, what you're trying to achieve there?
Well, votingrights.ie is an organization, it's a diaspora organization with representatives across the world. And basically, going back to, you use the term, I'm an Irish national. When I moved to the United States, I did not lose my interest in Ireland. And neither has the vast majority of people who've left Ireland. We have a vested interest. It is our land of our birth. It's where we grew up. Even my wife still corrects me when I'm saying, "Oh, I'm going home." Ireland is my home. And to foster the relationship with the diaspora for the benefit of Ireland, there needs to be some type of representation for the diaspora in Ireland. For example, here in the United States, the Irish American population is declining because of lack of immigration. The census has dropped the number from 41 million down to 31 million. And the expectation is when the next census comes, that rate of decline will accelerate because of lack of immigration and the lack of real engagement by Ireland with the diaspora, or in my case, an Irish citizen living abroad. And it's important that that relationship be fostered with some type of representation in Dublin. And when I say representation, I'm saying a point person for us, that when we have an issue anywhere in the world, Irish citizen has a person to go to, not a phone number, but a name that represents their interest in Ireland. Note I said that nice and slow. Their interest in Ireland. In my tenure at the parade, I have been approached by various individuals. Who do I need to talk to in Ireland about buying this battery that is going up for sale? I'm interested in investing. I'm doing background research for a client, blah, blah, blah. I go, I don't know. Another person, I want to establish a factory in Ireland building modular homes. Who do I need to talk to? Is there anybody I need to talk to? And again, I don't know, other than Call Enterprise Ireland or the IDA Ireland, which at times, I'm embarrassed to say, sometimes don't follow through in following up on leads like that. And they've done an excellent job, don't get me wrong, in increasing employment in Ireland, in engaging corporate America in particular to invest in Ireland, but they did it at a time when they had a tax advantage, a corporate tax advantage, which now disappeared last year. And if Ireland, Enterprise Ireland, IDA, and the Irish government want to continue to attract businesses to Ireland for the future of Ireland, they need to have point people from various regional constituencies around the world of Irish citizens, representing Irish citizens. So when they want to invest or they want to return to Ireland with a business, that they have a point person that they can pick up a phone and say, "Look, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Who do I need to talk to?" Right now, it's and I've used the term with several government ministers, it's a faceless entity called the Irish government. And the diaspora, especially Irish nationals like myself, we've never lost our interest in Ireland. Our interests living abroad are reflective of the people who helped to establish the state in the first place. And to say that once we leave Ireland and move abroad, we lose all interest in Ireland, we don't deserve some kind of representation. And it behooves me, because Ireland loses out on that. And in the future, especially here in North America, with the decline of Irish Americans, as I said to one of the government minister, I won't identify there, about a month ago, I says, you understand, we're the only ethnic group here in the United States that on our national holiday, we have access to the White House. I says, if you don't engage with some kind of representation and build up low grassroots representation here in the United States, I says, you're going to lose that influence, and that's going to dramatically affect the future of Ireland 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's important that they have some kind of representation. And as the minister said, well, Hilary, what are you talking about? I said, well, you can't have outside people in the seat of power, which is the Dáil. You have a three-way coalition currently. So the way to go is representation in the Seanad. And that would, by expanding the Seanad to have constituencies, to include maybe as constituency for North America, constituency for Europe, a constituency for Asia, and just like the university panels, which I'm a member of and vote in the Seanad elections, and they would mail out to those who register, and they would then mail back their ballots to elect representatives for those areas. And while there's a cost associated with that, the benefits, there's no doubt in my mind, will be 100-fold from an economic, but more importantly, a political. Because without political influence, as you have here, and Ireland has enjoyed for the last 100 years, without political influence, you don't have economic influence. And that's very, very important. And while I'm saying the United States, the same thing applies in the UK and in Australia and so on. You have to have that representation to continue Ireland on the trajectory that it's been on, which is basically economic stability, employment stability, and with the price of housing in Ireland and the cost of living in Ireland, in the surveys 4 or 5 months ago published in the Irish Independent, 70% of young people were thinking of leaving Ireland. And that's fair enough. Why? Because a lot of people who leave Ireland turn to Ireland with capital, investment, housing, social, new ideas, more importantly, to progress the economy. And that will only help Ireland in the long run. But you've got to have some kind of representation. And one of the things I constantly hear in my role at votingrights.ie is, well, I called so-and-so and I called this other one and they never called me back. And that is opportunities lost for Ireland. Whereas if there was a point person there, their job would be to represent the interests of the Irish nationals abroad in Ireland. That's their job. Right now, I could go to a TD. Why would he pay any attention to me? He doesn't represent me. And that's part of the issue for the future of Ireland. So there needs to be some kind of constitutional changes to incorporate the diaspora better.
Hilary, I agree fully with you in terms of the fact that a lot of our diaspora, be they Irish nationals, be they first or second or third generation, are often very up to date or more up to date with affairs in Ireland. And I've noticed that in the years gone by when I visited with Irish communities in London and in Luton in England, and indeed when I've been in America and in Toronto, when I've been in different cities in America and also visited Toronto in Canada. So I agree fully with you. And I agree fully with you too, as did former Taoiseach Beirne Ahern when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, about the need to continue to nurture and renew in each generation our relationship with both America and distinctly with Irish America as well. Hilary?
Like just to let you know, this morning before I came on the call, I was there was 4 of us on the call, 1 in Canada, 1 in Dublin, 1 in London, and myself here in New York. And our discussion was basically about the upcoming Global Civic Forum and the importance that the Irish government need to engage. And the 4 of us, let's just say we didn't meet by accident. We're leaders in our various constituencies, and all of us were saying the same thing. We're not being engaged. We're not being representative. Ireland is losing out, and all of us are Irish nationals, and we're saying that. And it just needs to, something needs to, it needs to be addressed. After 300 years of immigration, one would think Ireland will be inclusive of the people who left, and also give them some kind of representation, because they have not lost their national interest in Ireland. They just haven't. That's why 2 million Americans visited Ireland in 2019. That's huge if you reflect on that.
No, it is, Hilary, and we could talk for a great deal longer, but unfortunately, time is against us. But you speak very eloquently about the need to nurture and renew these connections, these very important connections, both political, cultural, tourism, in terms of economic investment, which is two-way now, which is great to see. Hilary, I want to wish you all the best in your work with the parade, in your work with votingrights.ie, in your continued work to defend the Good Friday Agreement. And thank you very much for agreeing to participate in this interview. And hopefully I will see you in New York, or indeed in Dublin, when you're over here on your lobbying efforts at some point in the future.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Hilary. Bye-bye.
Gur mil maga.